In this video, I'm going to be giving you all of the best counters for going up against Kyurem, a legendary raid boss that is returning this weekend. Hi, how's it going everyone? It's me, it's Count Jinsula. I hope you're having a good day, and welcome to today's Pokemon Go video. Today we're going to be covering Kyurem, which is a legendary Pokemon that I think is very underrated. It may not necessarily be a great raid attacker, but in terms of the Master League, this Pokemon is actually a really good pick. Now, Kyurem is an Ice and Dragon type Pokemon, so the amount of counters that you can bring are going to be incredibly limited. Because it has the Dragon typing, most of the counters that you would bring up against Ice types are actually negated, and the same goes the other way around. But if you bring Fighting types, this Pokemon is going to be really easy. Alright, so let's go over the details for this raid boss. Kyurem is a legendary Pokemon that has the Dragon typing and the Ice typing. This gives it a plethora of different weaknesses, including Dragon type attacks, Fairy type attacks, Fighting type attacks, Rock type attacks, and Steel type attacks. It's also going to be resistant to Electric, Grass, and Water type attacks. Now, getting the perfect IVs for Kyurem is going to be essential, considering that this Pokemon is pretty much only good for the Master League. The perfect IVs is going to be 2042, and if it's weather boosted by either snowy weather or windy weather, it's going to be 2553. In my opinion, you should go for those perfect IVs as much as you can, and possibly even a weather boost so that you don't have to spend as much Stardust to power it up. Therefore, if it is snowy outside or windy outside, you should definitely go out and try to complete as many of these raids as you can. Now, Kyurem is one of those bosses that's kind of on the easier side, as long as you're bringing the right counters. You could securely defeat Kyurem with 3 to 4 trainers that are at least level 35, and if you want to challenge yourself, you could duo against this Pokemon. Make sure you're using any kind of damage bonus to your advantage, such as friendship levels, party play boosts, different things like that. Alright, next let's move on to the best counters going up against Kyurem. In terms of Mega Evolutions, you have plenty of options, but I would go with Mega Blaziken. The reason for that is because this Pokemon deals an insane amount of Fighting type DPS, but it also resists some of Kyurem's moves, so that's something you should keep in mind. You will want your Mega Evolution to be in battle as long as possible. Now, in terms of non-Mega and non-Shadow Pokemon, I would suggest going with a bunch of Terrakion, mainly because Terrakion has both the Fighting type and Rock type, so it's going to resist Kyurem's moves much like Mega Blaziken, and it's also going to deal an insane amount of DPS. And it's not something that a lot of players will mention, but Terrakion actually has pretty high TDO on top of having high DPS, so this Pokemon is the ideal Pokemon to bring up against Kyurem. Now, another good alternative is going to be Metagross with Meteor Mash. This Pokemon is insanely good up against Kyurem. It does resist a lot of Kyurem's moves, and it also deals a lot of DPS. Kyurem is weak against Steel types, and the best Steel type in the game that's not a Mega or a Shadow is going to be Metagross. So this is a Pokemon you should definitely consider bringing. Now, aside from these two, you could also bring Keldeo, Shadow Machamp, Lucario, or Conkeldurr. As long as you're bringing Pokemon with Fighting type attacks, you're pretty much going to be okay. Now, let's say you lack a lot of legendaries or shadow Pokemon in your collection. Well, also consider bringing these following Pokemon. I've already mentioned Metagross, Conkeldurr, and Lucario, but Rhyperior with Rock Wrecker is another great option. This Pokemon is very underrated as a Rock type attacker. A lot of people kind of forget the fact that Rhyperior also has the Rock typing, so you will get a same type attack bonus with Rock Wrecker, and I do think this Pokemon is viable going up against Kyurem. So yeah, it's a pretty straightforward fight. As long as you're bringing Fighting types, Steel types, or possibly even Fairy types if you have some good ones, Kyurem is going to go down no problem. I do suggest bringing a bunch of Shadow Pokemon so that you could take down Kyurem a lot faster. That way you could do a lot more of these raids. It's definitely going to be one you will want to farm up for a lot of different reasons. Now, one thing about Kyurem is that it's only going to be available for the next week. So make sure you're going out and raiding as much as you can, because after the Christmas holiday starts, I'm pretty sure there's going to be a lot of people who are not going to go out and raid. So I do suggest you do as many Kyurem as you can, especially this weekend when there's going to be a lot of people out for December Community Day. It's definitely a raid boss you will want to farm up. And I'll mention this again, Kyurem is something you could duo if you're a high enough level. This is a Pokemon that you could easily farm up for Rare Candy and Rare Candy XL. So even if you do not care about PvP, this is still a boss worth farming up for those resources alone. Also keep in mind that Kyurem is not a raid boss that comes back often. It typically only makes an appearance during the winter holidays, so this could be your one opportunity to farm up this raid boss. Also, don't forget that its shiny form is available as well, and the rate at which you can get a shiny is 1 in 20. So if you want yourself a really cool shiny, then don't miss out on this raid boss. It definitely has a really cool look in its shiny form. So why should you go after Kyurem? Well, if you can mine yourself a 100% IV of this Pokemon, it's going to be a pretty solid pick for the Master League in the Go Battle League. Unfortunately, like I said earlier, Kyurem is not going to be good for raid battles. Like, it's going to have some pretty good stats and some good moves, but there's going to be much better ice types out there, and there's obviously going to be much better dragon types. This Pokemon does fall by the wayside when it comes to raid DPS, but in terms of PvP, it is a pretty solid Pokemon. I'm still on the hunt for a 100% IV of this Pokemon because I want to try it out in the Master League myself. I think this Pokemon has a lot of potential, and in the future, if it gets even better moves, then it's definitely going to be much higher in priority. But yeah, in any case, that's going to be it for this video. Make sure you go out and raid Kyurem as much as you can. Go for those 100% IVs and make sure you farm up as much candy as possible for when you do eventually get that 100% IV. And let me know your thoughts regarding this raid boss down below. Is this a Pokemon that you plan to use in the Master League, or is it a Pokemon that has been one and done for you? Let me know in the comments and let's have a great discussion. And thank you so much for making it to this point in the video. If you ended up enjoying it and found it to be informative, make sure you hit that thumbs up button and subscribe if it's your first time here. And also don't forget that little bell so you can stay up to date on whenever I upload videos. Now I want to give a quick shout out to all my patrons on Patreon. You make this channel content possible. If you want to support my channel in any way, big or small, then make sure you go and check out the links in the description below. For all my patrons, they get a permanent spot on my in-game friends list. So if you want to interact with me in some way within Pokemon Go, like with remote raids or the friendship system, then make sure you go and check out my Patreon. Also, if you want to support my channel without spending any money, you could always do so by following me on social media. My handle is @Jinsula, and I'm on these following platforms. Alright, and that's going to be it. I'm Jinsula. Be safe, have fun, love yourself, and I'll catch you all later.